Hello, I'm Kads and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be answering the question of does my Sand Devil team still work after all of the nerfs to the boss? On paper, Plarium did say that most teams that already were successful would still be successful, but I think Plarium was thinking more about like the Godseeker and Eerie duo type strategies or the speed farm with Siffy type strategies and not necessarily the composition that I run. So without further ado, let's hop over to the dungeon tab and talk about a few of the important changes to the Sand Devil's Necropolis. So for starters, let me say that this video is going to be focusing on stage 25. If you're more looking for what to do on the lower stages or how to progress to the higher stages, then you can check out my lower level Sand Devil guide that I did in the past. And if you're looking for a more comprehensive summary of the boss encounter itself, particularly at the high levels, then you can check out my high level Sand Devil guide. I'll link both of those in the description box down below so you guys can check them out at your leisure. So coming over here to the boss guide, we can quickly run through the abilities and or passives that changed on the boss encounter. The A1 is still the same, decrease speed, decrease accuracy. The Dune Tempest, where he cleanses himself and heals, is still the same, so unchanged there. The big team killing, team wiping ability here is exactly the same. So none of those have changed. Mostly it is all to do with his passives. So the first change has to deal with his damage reduction. So you can see here listed by the different stages, 25%, 50%, 75%. So he just takes a lot less damage when he's not under debuffs. However, they changed this value here. So every debuff that you add onto him will reduce that damage reduction by 15%. This used to be 10%, so every debuff is just 50% stronger. And then on the other passive here, instead of all of his attacks destroying your max HP by 10%, now they do only 5%, so that's a 50% reduction. And then the last big change was on his next passive, which deals with the slumber counter, which they essentially just redistributed across all of the levels. So this is the current state of things, where it is 16 on stages 1 through 5, it is 14 on stages 6 to 10, 12 on stages 11 through 15, 10 on stages 16 through 20, and 8 on stages 21 through 25. And what it used to be, for reference, stage 1 through 5, it used to be 10 hits or 10 stacks. Stages 6 through 15 used to be 7, and then stage 16 to 25 used to be 5. So lots of increases across the board. So if we take a look at the team composition, this is the exact same one that we used in the high level Sand Devil guide. So we still have our 4-turn cooldown Revive on Death champion in Maruka, also doubling as a healer, single target healer for our primary healing champion, which is Woad Painted. You want your healer to be on a 4-turn cooldown, whoever that may be. It could be Rected Wrath, Ugo, etc. You have some form of debuffer, again on a 4-turn cooldown. Everything should be on a 4-turn cooldown, more or less. Debuffer in my case, I'm using Gomlock Skyhide, the Doom Tower champion, primarily because he has 5-star Brimstone, so it's just a lot of damage and it cannot be cleansed. You have some form of DPS, ideally with their heavy hitting ability on a 4-turn cooldown. Of course, we're bringing in Newt, previous fusion, 2 epics here for the healer's Revive on Death, and then another previous fusion to Tura Rhymehide, who you want someone who has a block debuffs on a 4-turn cooldown. His is technically on a 3-turn cooldown, but it's effectively on a 4-turn cooldown because his other ability is also on a 4-turn cooldown. So let's go ahead and see this team in action and answer the question of does my team still work in its current form? So once again, I'll refer you to the high level Sand Devil guide I put out just because I go more in depth talking about like the AI overrides and whatnot. But nonetheless, or long story short, I had to make one tweak to the team and the AI overrides, but the team still works as it used to before, and it's a lot faster. So one of the reasons it's faster is because of, obviously because of all the nerfs, but the changes that benefited me the most, or I guess all of them benefited me, but increased damage or reduced damage reduction. It's hard to say that. The reduction in his damage reduction allows Newt to actually pretty much hit the 10% enemy max HP cap every time he uses his ability. So that helps us just do a lot more damage quicker, on top of reducing the boss's defense so that we get closer to the cap. Depending on your crit damage, obviously if your Newt is a lot lower crit damage, it's going to be a lot harder to do. The reduction in the destruction of max HP helps my Gomlock, who's in regen, kind of heal himself back up to full so that he actually places the weaken. Some of the time, not always. It kind of depends on how much damage he takes for each cycle of the boss. And then the slumber counter was the big change. And so because I had to change Woad Painted's AI so that she never uses her A3 because it's a single hitter. Because in order for this comp to actually work, you do have to wake up the boss before he takes his turn after the big team wiping ability. So you do have to manage somehow to get in with whatever substitutions you might have made. You need to make sure that you get the 8 hits. So we basically, unless if Newt gets a Giant Slayer proc, then he gets it on his his own. But if he doesn't get a Giant Slayer proc, then Tatura will be the last one to get the 8th hit in across all 5 of the champions. So we're coming here to the end of the fight, and this should be the last cycle. So we come back in, double hitter there, count the hits, 1, 2 there. So there's 4. Then Newt would do 1, 2, 3, and then if there was another cycle, Tatura would come in and be number 4. So that's again if there's no Giant Slayer procs. If Giant Slayer procs, then Newt will wake up the boss. But regardless, he's not going to cut in on Tatura. So it still works. The exact same comp, just had to tweak the AI overrides a little bit. And honestly, this might be good because of the other substitutions for the Revive on Death champion being like Crimson Helm or Lightsworn, because I think Crimson Helm has like a quad hitter in her ability or in her kit, and then Lightsworn has a triple hitter on his A1. So before, those were a bit kind of iffy because you had to really make sure that you didn't overhit the boss, so that you wouldn't wake him up too soon before some of your champions had time to place their debuffs and whatnot. But now that you need 8 hits, those champions are honestly kind of better for this fight, just because you do have to actually wake up the boss for this particular composition. So as you can see, this team takes about 2.5 minutes. I think before it was somewhere around 3.5, basically 1 more cycle than this one, or it would take 3 cycles if I got like all 3 cycles to have the Brimstone proc, but if not, then it would take 4 cycles of that. So it was somewhere around 3.5 minutes. But now pretty much as long as Brimstone procs at least once, it's going to be 3 cycles, so about 2.5 minutes. So just to emphasize what I was talking about with Woad Painted, in order for this to work, 1, she does need to be unbooked, or you don't have to book her at all because she gets an extra turn on this ability, which brings it down to a 4-turn cooldown effectively. And you want that, again, everyone, you want their stuff to be on a 4-turn cooldown. But to drive home the point of the change that I made is that I turned off her A3 and I just let her use her A1 because it's a double hitter, which just gives us the extra hit that we needed to make sure that we wake up the boss. In terms of the builds for these champions, once again, I go more in depth into it in the high-level Sand Devil guide, which is in the description box down below. But I will at least reiterate the choices of the sets that they are in because they do kind of matter. So Gomlock Skyhide or your debuffer, whoever that may be, if they are not positive affinity relative to the boss on stage 25 specifically is what we're talking about here, then you will probably need them in some form of regen and or mortal, which can be tough to get the stats in order to have enough accuracy to land your stuff. I guess we didn't even talk about that, but the accuracy requirements have come down as well. I didn't change any of the champions on this team just because I didn't need to. So Gomlock technically has a lot more accuracy than he probably needs, but nonetheless, it still works. So he's in regen and perception, built with high accuracy and an appropriate amount of speed. Newt I have built in destroy. That's not useful for this boss, but I do use it for, he's built for Scarab King specifically on my team to speed farm that boss for me. Tatura Rhymehide is in Guardian because I do want him to kind of tank some of the damage because he is one of the positive affinity champions, so he cannot be crit ever by the boss, and he's prone to getting weak hits as well, so he's just soaking up damage on behalf of other people. Woad Painted is in a curing set. We do want to get that 20% bonus heal, so she just heals a lot more. I mean, 20% of her heal, which is 100% of her max HP, is a massive difference, so curing set was definitely the way to go. 2-piece protection set for the extra HP as well, just to make sure her heal is as high as possible. And then Maruka is in regen because she is a negative affinity relative to the boss, so she's actually more prone to getting crit, so we want her to heal up even though she is defense based. So fear not, if you were running a composition like mine against the Sand Devil, all you'd have to do in order to make sure it's still going to work after the current nerfs is to ensure that you're still breaking or waking him up once you cycle through all of your champions after he kills everyone with Revive on Death. Let me know in the comment section down below how often you guys run the Sand Devil and what team you're currently running to beat that boss. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below and feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching and have a good one.